Good evening, everyone. You are watching 72 News, and I'm your host, Shoaib Zaidi. It is nice to know that this program is really getting popular, and this people are getting asking about this program. And this is our third show, Queensland Tomorrow. How much immigrants can make impact on this election, and the election is not very far. The election is just next week. So this today program is ultimately going to be an important program in order to understand what's going to be happen. Let's introduce the panelists today, and we are very thankful that today we have Dr. Bernard Malik. He is expert political analyst politics. Always love to share the politics, explain the politics for new comers, new understanding. And I have also experts, Professor Grant Pitman. He's not expert. He's really the analyst with a lot of rich political journey. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you very much for being with us. This is our third show, and in last second show we mentioned that we would like to discuss something about from Mr. Bernard Malik and something from Professor Pitman. So let me start the last year question with Professor Pitman. Professor Pitman, let's start with a hard question. I mentioned in the last program that you have a good understanding about the politics, and politics is a knowledge. Not like in India and Pakistan, it's some kind of power or opportunity. It's really knowledge, and you have a knowledge. If you allow me, may I ask why you did not think to be a part of a politician or being a politician rather than advisor or analyst?
It's a question a number of people have asked. I spent studying about 20 years in politics in Australia and America and England and Canada and New Zealand politics, and a little bit in your home country as well. So I've been a student of politics, and I believe that one of the great ways that you can assist politicians is to be a mentor.
Mentor, yeah.
And so I spent most of my career as a policy developer and maker for the political sector, both as a bureaucrat and as a party political policy maker. I probably wouldn't stand the rigours of being a populist type person. I'm sort of behind the scenes person, and I think I could do best by helping behind the scenes with politicians rather than being out the front trying to represent a political party.
Or in other words, do you think it's really difficult because whatever you say in front of the public, you have to try to keep everything at the back also. In our country, it is not possible. I don't know here. Do you think that it could be also because this role is very difficult, you should have a two standard, Professor?
One of the issues that's occurring not only here in Australia, but I see it in America and England, about whether or not a politician is a statesman or a populist person. In other words, certain people have values that they want to adhere to, others are more tolerant of values. And I think I'm probably a person who likes the statesman type person who's got principle-centred leadership as against somebody who may sway to populist votes or populist views. So I'm more of a statesman type person.
Wonderful. I got you. Thank you, Pitman. Coming back to Mr. Bernard Malik. Mr. Bernard Malik, I can ask the same question to you also, but I think ultimately I understand your personality, and similarly to you like to be more state aid person rather than change, from something like that. You can add your opinion also. And then second part will be, now look, I find that the existing government, they are visiting a lot of manufacturing facility, showing a lot of jobs, showing their interest, getting some favorable response or supporting comments from the manufacturing facility owner And same time they are making a charge against the second party that okay, if somebody going to be support this party, they are going to lose the jobs. So how you are looking this movement from this one, and if you like to add something about why Mr. Professor Pitman people is not suitable for the politics.
I think Professor Pitman is too good to be a politician.
Too good to be politician.
He's very simple, sweetheart guy who has lived his life well to his own principles and on his own terms.
Right.
At times when you join politics, you can see you cannot cross the party line.
Yes.
And not all the time you get to pass a legislation that you would like. Sometimes it can be against your principles.
Right.
Yeah. And second question is what you asked about parties showcasing their work.
Yeah.
Yes, this happens during the election anyway. Liberal Party will showcase their work to ask for vote, and Labour will showcase their work to ask for votes.
But there was a strategy, you mentioned something called fear strategy.
Yes. When that comes to fear tactic, you said that they were going to, if Liberal Party comes, they will probably lay off a lot of employees.
Right.
That is a fear tactic that they use to scare people into voting for them.
Right.
And if you remember during not this but previous federal election, they did that. Labour did that fear tactic by saying that if Liberals come to power, they're going to abolish Medicare.
Right.
Medicare is very sensitive issue to all Australians, and it happened exactly on the eve of election. Next day, all of a sudden, the billboards and the placards showed up at all the polling booths to say that Liberals will abolish Medicare.
Right.
It didn't work enough in their favor to win government. So, yes, the Labour Party would come up with some tactics. Unfortunately, Labour doesn't have much to show for the achievements other than that Premier has shown excellent very commendable leadership in containing coronavirus. So people are happy. I think for that alone, she might come back to.
Okay, that ultimately will get the opinion. Professor Dr. Bernard mentioned these tactics, showcases, and I remember when I was discussing with you of the program, you have mentioned that these kind of things, and my question again is coming back to the similar which I discussed there, that why from LNP we are not looking at such kind of big showcases. What is the reason behind it? Does it relate to the fundraisers, supporters from their side? That was the reason. What is the reason of this from the LNP?
Historically, the LNP funding has been from the private sector, business people. And here in Queensland, there's a lot of development going on. There's a lot of land being zoned for housing, for industrial estates and for growth. And so a lot of the money to the Conservative government has come from developers. The Labor government last year passed legislation here in Queensland to stop developers giving money predominantly to the Conservatives. They give it to Labor too, but so that reduced their funding, which meant that your social media campaigns, your TV advertising, your billboards, the monies you've got to spend on those things is being reduced significantly.
Right.
Labor gets its money from the unions.
Right.
If you travel around the roads here in Brisbane, you'll see large billboards which cost thousands of dollars every week to advertise on, are all predominantly Labor, very few Conservative. Right.
So coming back to one of the points which Dr. Bernard mentioned, that the corona is the individual. It's one of the major decisions which may help the Premier. How do you think about this? Do you think that really the action they took, the Labour took to protect the people, is really works for them, and they were very strong, and people believed them, and that's why they supported their strategies against the corona?
the politics of health is critical in Australia at the present time. And although we've had corona outbreaks, it's nothing compared to India or America or Europe. Ours is very, very, very mild. But the Premier has leveraged off the politics of health to show that Queensland has had very, very, very low cases compared to the rest of Australia. But in terms of percentages, you're talking very, very small percentages. But the perception or the view of the general public is that by closing the borders, both nationally and internationally, she has been our saviour from coronavirus. So many people believe that that's a strong leadership quality of the current Premier, and I believe that will probably be one of the major reasons why people will support the Premier and allow it to govern for another 4 years.
So you are almost on the same page of Mr. Bernard Malik. He already mentioned. Can I get the your opinion? Understand this? This is your opinion.
I think it's a strong argument she's putting up, and people probably don't understand some of the other dynamics in health. Like Queensland has massive financial problems, and if coronavirus were to impact on Queensland, it would have a serious detriment on our health system. So there are other factors, and I call it the politics of health. We only get sort of one view. You don't hear all the other issues behind the scenes with health in Queensland. And we have a free hospitalisation system, the only one in Australia. So if you come here, you get treated, generally speaking, with free health. And free health was brought in by, I believe, a Conservative government many, many years ago.
So it's all over the Australia, not only in the Queensland. This is all over the free hospitalisation system.
Predominantly in Queensland. The other states have a tiered arrangement. Right. But in Queensland, it's free health.
Right. Yeah. Right. Mr. Malik, free hospital, one of the reasons, and plus the corona, plus the financially health management. There are a lot of things, and you are a businessman also. So do you think the strategy, financial planning for the corona, which going back to the job seeker, job keeper, distribution money, and looking after the people, also added positive points towards the Labour government?
I have spoken to so many of my doctor friends.
Right.
And they don't give a lot of points to the Premier for having done this well, because Andrew, the Premier of Victoria, is struggling. So if it is a Labour policy, then it should succeed in both the states. Right. But they say that Queensland just got lucky.
Lucky.
Yes. From that point, yes, we have stayed very safe. And I think that credit would go to Premier. But when it comes to other financial decisions, I think she also gets credit from a strong federal government leadership during coronavirus.
Right.
Prime Minister put out money like it was raining. Everybody who was even slightly eligible got $750. So people did not feel the pinch of hardship.
Really?
In fact, they enjoyed. I talked to a lot of my friends. They're having fun time.
Right.
Because it's not a federal election. Politics is very local. They would benefit from it.
Now, you just mentioned fun time, and you last time you mentioned about the corona. I believe you're already aware of it, that AFL final, which I read and I discuss from the people, I think it's first time the AFL final happened in the Queensland. So does the corona help Queensland in support also in this form? The people watch the live AFL final in Gabba, and this is one part of the question. Do you think that this is also a supporting, because fun time, and she provided opportunity of the fun? Mr. Bernard Malik.
Yes, absolutely. See, politics is all about appearing in public, trying to say we are with you. She knows Queenslanders are very sports-loving people.
Right.
if you remember the case of that girl whose father was dying of cancer and she wanted to come.
Right.
And the Premier took very strong stand against it, even when the Prime Minister had intervened.
Right.
She became a bit unpopular on that one because most of the people felt she was not very sensitive.
Right.
Having said that, she came next day and made a strong statement to say, it doesn't matter, I won't change my mind. I am here to keep Queensland safe.
Right.
So it's all politics at the end of the day.
No, now because it's a fun, and in my opinion, do you think that because still they have the border restrictions, but in other states it's fine that the people, even though yesterday I was discussing from one of my New Zealand friend, and he says that one of the guy who came from the ship, he bring the few cases. So coming back to the GABA match, it's a very open opportunity. Do you think there was not a possibility of high risk for the corona?
Yes, it was high risk. Anytime you have a lot of people gathered together in a small area, there is a risk. And again, I bring back my same card. Queensland has been lucky.
Lucky.
Yeah.
Professor Pitman, GABA AFL final, because you are looking, does it happen first time in Queensland, or it happened earlier also? So because some of my Australian friends, they are considering the achievement, and I remember one of the speech from Premier that she mentioned on her speech that this is also one of big thing we are bringing AFL final in Queensland.
Yeah, the AFL final, and let me just say, AFL is not Queensland's sport. Mm-hmm. It's a national one, but Queensland is into rugby league and rugby union.
Right.
This is actually a southern state game, and 30,000 people turned up, and I'm not sure if they're all Queenslanders or if they smuggled in over the border to come and watch it, because they were two teams from Melbourne.
Yes.
Up here. But what I think the Premier did, which was probably a good move, was that Australians see positive results from sports. In other words, our esteem goes up, the stress is reduced.
Right.
And Australians are very much, just as Pakistan and India are into the cricket, if you see good results, that lifts your spirit.
Yes.
And I think she was probably trying to offer a way out of the stressful times. And I think to her credit, she's probably given a national support to an activity that probably wouldn't have gone ahead in the southern states. So she played the politics of sports, and she was there with the 30,000 people enjoying the game.
Yeah. Okay. Now come back to our original plan, original subject. So we discussed something about the preparation. Now we are going to discuss about the election and what's going to happen on next Monday, what we are going to discuss. So let's start from the Professor Pitman. Professor Pitman, a very a close statement from you. Before going to discuss in this one, I like to know your opinion. Which government, what kind of government you are thinking that is going to be happen? Let me share the numbers first. Okay, in 2017, Australian Labor Party, they won 48 seats. Qatar Australian Party had 3 seats. LNP 39 seats. And keep in mind that Australian Labor Party and LNP are the major party. So they have 48 and 39. Other candidate only one. Paul Henson won, and then the Green won. So in total, there was a 93. However, Labour 48, and then LNP is 39. So now coming back to my question to you, that this is the last year score. Most of the time when we discuss, people like you, they say 80% is going to be same, only 20% is going to be changed. And does 20% is going to be changed now? These numbers are on the last year election, and I believe that this time it might change. What is your opinion on these numbers?
If you'd asked me that question about 2 weeks ago, I would have said that Labor was probably well in front and probably would pick up more than 48 seats.
Right.
So maybe 50, 52 seats.
Right.
There are about 12 seats which are marginal seats, which between Labor and the LNP
Right.
are marginal seats. So it wouldn't be difficult. However, in the last week, in the opinion polls, they're suggesting it might end up a hung parliament, which means the Premier may only end up with 43, 44, 45 seats and may have to rely on independents or the Greens Party to form government. So the current opinion polls are saying that she may lose some seats from 48 back, and that the Greens or some of the independent parties may pick up some of those 12 seats which are marginal. So she may have to form an alliance or an agreement with another political party to gain power. That's what the current opinion polls are saying.
Right, right. Going back to the Mr. Malik. Mr. Malik, you know already, and public opinion polls, we discussed also about it. What do you like to mention about this, the numbers? So 48 is going to be 43, not major change going to be happen with LNP from 39, but overall there was a 12 seats. What is your opinion on this one? And just keeping in mind that there is a public poll also, and I like to opinion on you that how precise and accurate are the public polls?
I want to concur what Professor Pitman said.
Right.
There are only 2 seats that Labour is ahead.
Right.
In terms of forming the government. And there are interestingly 15 marginal seats for Labour and 15 for Liberal.
Right.
This time minor parties seem very strong. So the results might just go down to the wire. It very interesting polls this time. It has shifted a lot from what it used to be. Earlier, it was very clear that Labour was going to form government. Now it looks like it could be anybody's guess. When it comes to opinion polls, again, they are sometimes biased. It depends now where the sampling is done.
Right.
You call a Labour electorate and ask you about Liberals, they will say, oh, no, Labour will win. So many a times you would know in US and here too, what happened, CNN is sold out to Democrats, Fox News channel is sold out to Liberals.
Right.
So any opinion poll they bring, that will favor their candidate.
Right.
If you remember last time when President Trump ran, nobody said he would become president. All the opinion polls were in favor of Hillary.
Right.
And then there was a landslide. And that is why Mrs. Hillary Clinton refused to concede. Generally, the decency and the protocol and the tradition says the losing candidate concedes that day unless it's really tough. She was under shock. She went home, came back and conceded next morning.
Right.
So that speaks volumes about opinion polls.
Right. Now, landsliding. Professor Pitman, you are expecting the landsliding from the Labour side, but did you expecting something change upward from the LNP, or the number remains same? 39 is, we are trying to find out some numbers. So 48 going to be 43, 39. Is it going to be 42, 43 or 38? And I'll back to Mr. Bernard Malik also with the same question.
The Conservatives would certainly like 48. But again, when you look at the marginal seats, and I was looking at less than 2%, majority of them are very, and when you're talking about less than 2%, you're only talking about a couple of hundred votes.
Right.
So you're not talking thousands of votes. And a couple of hundred votes across some of these electorates would make the swing against the LNP. And at the moment, there are 3 or 4 groups or parties like the Qatar Party and the One Nation Party and the United Party, which wouldn't take much of a swing, so they could be reduced from their 39 seats down to 35, 36 very quickly because of these strong independents, and they've got some very good candidates. So I think it'll be more the independent parties than Labor that takes the seats if they're going to lose any.
Right. So, Mr. Malik, LNP is going to be the same number, or you have the same opinion that the independent is going to be different figures, and it might impact on the Labor directly, not LNP?
I'll discuss a couple of the seats on this issue.
Yeah.
Labor is ahead with only 2 seats. In the whole Gold Coast region, Labor has only 1 seat, and that also is held by 0.7% margin.
0.7% margin.
Yeah. So it's less than 1%.
Right.
Then there is another area called Townsville, 0.4% margin.
Townsville, 0.4% margin. And in Townsville, there was some immigrants from India. He's from Labor, or he's from LNP?
No. There are 2 seats that have been given to immigrants. Immigrants, that is us, people from South Asia.
Yeah.
And one is Mehran. Both the seats are actually in Brisbane City.
Brisbane City.
Mr. Ani has been given a seat by Labor, and Madam Pinky Singh has been given a seat by Liberal Party.
Right.
Both the seats are not held by those parties. Labor doesn't hold Maiwar, it's held by Green, and Madam Pinky Singh's seat is actually held by Grace, the Education Minister, by Labor.
Right. So it means that these changes. So Mr. Malik, so do you think that the seat in Gold Coast with a percentage margin, does it have big? Does it can, because in Gold Coast a lot of immigrants also living there. So do you think that the arrival of new immigrants, let's say from 2017 till today, a lot of immigrants came and settled in Gold Coast, and now it's a regional area also become like that. So these things may impact on this results?
It's interesting you mentioned it. 5,000 new people have moved into that electorate. So it's anybody's guess this time.
Right.
When margin is 0.7%,
yeah,
it's anybody's guess. 5,000 new votes are a lot of votes. And no one knows, because the previous results and the history cannot be accurately reflected here, because there are 5,000 new votes.
Right. So it means that we have only 3 to 4 seats where we have very close margin. Other than that, we are expecting the same result. However, Professor Pitman, what is the reason that you both are mentioning that independence has more opportunity? We did not discuss. We discussed more. We analyzed more about LNP and Labor, but we did not do much analysis about the independent. Why do you think it's there, Professor Pitman? What do you think? What are the reasons?
Australian politics for the last 100 years has been predominantly the 2 major parties with slight variations. Historically, minor parties have only lasted for anything up to 3 to say 30 years.
Right.
So the lifespan is very short for minor parties. Usually most minor parties are a factor of a personality. And as the personality gets older, the party diminishes. For example, One Nation is Pauline Hanson. Pauline Hanson is now up my age. I'm getting older. Clive Palmer is well over my age, and so he's going to have difficulties. And Bob Katter is well over my age. So they've got very elderly politicians who have set them up. And generally when they sort of dissipate, the parties tend to dissipate here in Australia. But having said that, the Greens are an exception to the rule. The Greens won 6 seats down in the Australian Capital Territory a week or so ago. And they hold the more than the balance of power down there. They're a substantive force in, although a small territory. They've picked up 6 seats.
6 seats, yeah.
And that's unusual. So it's the life generation of smaller parties, which doesn't have longevity, whereas the bigger parties have. But Dr. Bernard's quite right that the Greens are going to be the interesting party to watch in the Brisbane area.
Let me get from Mr. Bernard. Why, Mr. Bernard, do you think that the Green, because of that, they just showed some results in federal, in the other states? Or do you think that they're really doing a different kind of politics? I'm talking about the Greens. If we are coming back to the small parties, like we have the Qatar Australian parties, some other candidate, Polly Hansen, and then Green. But you both are saying that the Green numbers look like is going to be different than this time. And their roles is, again, other states also getting different. What are the reasons? What is the strategy they have different?
I don't think they have any strategy that is different. They continue to be same who they are. Interestingly, the electorate I am sitting in, my office is in Wollongabba.
Yeah.
And currently, both of us are sitting in Wollongabba. Dr. Pitman's office also is in Wollongabba.
Yeah.
Here, Greens are very strong.
Very strong.
Yes, the only councilman we have in Brisbane City Council is from here. And this time, Jackie Trade, who was the former deputy premier, is running from here like always. And she seems vulnerable this time because of the few scandals she was accused of.
Yeah.
So very likely Greens could make a dent here or possibly win.
And who was the last winner from your Wollongabba? Who was the last winner?
Labour.
Labour. Now coming back to the Green, and one more thing about the Greens, that they are giving more opportunity to immigrants. Is it true? Because look like they are fine for the lower elections or candidates. There are a lot of Sikh. There are few people from India, few from Pakistan also. Do you think that could be also a reason?
To justify that point, I can say that over here the councilman is actually of Sri Lankan origin.
Right.
But political compulsions are different. You agree with me. They need a winning candidate. They don't care whether it's black, white, or yellow.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, they need a few seats in the parliament to form government.
Right.
And those considerations are very alive even in our countries.
Right.
It's a Sikh-dominant electorate. They bring a Sikh candidate. If it is same way over here now, you would see, though the 2 seats where South Asians are running are not immigrant seats, but those seats have never been won by those parties. So they give you the seats that they cannot win.
Right.
And Madam Pinky Singh is doing exceptional job.
Right.
Her seat has been won by Labour Party or Liberal Party only once since it was instituted.
But Malik sir, Mr. Pinky Singh, Ms. Pinky Singh is from the Brisbane city, and it's very difficult. You know, the people are different mindset and a lot of busy business people. All mix of everything. So can you still predict these seats like Brisbane city?
She is actually exceptional candidate. I happen to know her personally too. I have supported her. We have gone to few of her functions.
Right.
She is an excellent candidate. If anybody needs to win, I think she should win.
She should win. Right. Now, Professor Pitman, coming back to the Green. Now, as I already mentioned that, and Mr. Bernard Malik already explained that what are the Greens' possible achievements. Hang Parliament. When it's coming back to the hang Parliament, it looks like that the small parties is trying to bend the major party and trying to achieve more than what they should deserve. This is one possibility. And other one is that the whole period, there was always a fear that it can be collapsed anytime. It happened here also?
It has. Queensland, probably in the last 40 years, have had a couple of hung parliaments. one was very well known where a man called Peter Wellington, an independent, controlled the parliament here in Queensland with Labor.
Right.
And the interesting things about independents is they have their own agendas. And Peter Wellington demanded what he called community cabinet meetings,
Right.
which required the cabinet not to meet just in Brisbane, but to go all around Queensland.
Right.
And he won his seat for several times over his initiative to get cabinet to move out of Brisbane and to go to other locations.
Right.
So with the Greens, if they come to power conjointly with Labor, then the Greens will want certain benefits given to them to maximise their member in Parliament or members in Parliament, but also to demonstrate that they have an impact. And that was evident with the Greens having an impact on the Adani mines.
Right.
And in recent times, I have a man called Nav Singh who's running for the Greens out where I am.
Yeah.
And for the first time, the Greens have got policies outside of environmental issues.
Yes.
Next to the Greens poster, Nav Singh's poster, there's a sign up saying we support a public hospital in a suburb. Now, I've never seen a Greens poster that talks about public hospitals before. So they're broadening their base a little bit more by getting involved in public issue type policies.
Right. Mr. Malik, hung parliament, and again, the weak, powerful, and powerful is depend on the small parties. How you are looking this time? Do you think that it? Let's rephrase it. 50% possibilities are hung parliament, and then 30% possibilities is Labour, and 20% possibility is LNP with the small.
Hung parliament is really bad in these countries.
Really?
Most of the time, this independents and minority parties don't join the government. So they sit outside and demand their pound of flesh.
Right.
And that way they can broaden their agenda, they can broaden their appeal and do it. But what happens is they work on single-minded couple of issues.
Right.
And when government cannot legislate on what they want, they immediately pull the power back.
Right.
What's happened now is Queensland has fixed terms. So whether it's hung parliament or full parliament or partial parliament, it is going to last 4 years. Hung parliaments are really useful in our countries, where there could be one MP who just wins by mistake, becomes a minister in the cabinet, and continues to rule.
Right. Last question to Professor Grant. How hung parliament was decided? Because there was coordinators which actively engaged as soon as the election came. How long do you think in the same one night or 2 nights only the coordinator works and then they engage the small parties? Last question.
Here in Australia, you probably would have said that was right 50 years ago, but there's a lot of negotiation going on before the elections. That go on with the minor parties, particularly with the preferential voting, and making some agreements if things occur. The solid agreements occur after the election because one of the heads of the major political parties has to go to the governor.
Right.
Say to the governor, I can form government and I have the support of this group of independents. The governor then says, I will give you a commission to govern. In other words, the Queen's right to govern. They hand them the commission, and whilst the governor has the assurance that that party and the independents can have government, they will hold the Queen's commission to govern. Yes. If they lose that, then the governor will make, some would say a demand, some would say a request for the Premier of the state to return the commission, and then they will ask the opposition if they can form government. If they can't, the option is we go back to the polls to try and see if we can resolve it.
Okay.
What happens, Professor, this time? Now it's a fixed term.
Yeah.
4 years, yes.
4 years. So what if they cannot govern 4 years?
Again, they're held at the pleasure of the commission of the governor. So if they can't stay in power, then they have a dissolution and they go back to the polls again. And it'll be fixed term from the next 4 years from that poll.
So the fixed term really doesn't mean anything.
No, not really. All it's trying to do was, historically, previous governments may decide after 2 years that they're looking fairly secure, so we'll go and get the vote rather than waiting the 3 years. And because of the corruption issue that occurred in the 1990s, one of the recommendations was to change the electoral boundaries, the preferential voting, and the fixed terms, so that government stayed in power for that period of time and couldn't use populist vote to contain the public for staying in power. So it brought more consistency, more constancy amongst government, and the public were reassured of the government being in power for its full term to do its job.
Right. I think the conclusion is for the day that we are having different results, and ultimately the experts already mentioned there was a change. There is an expectation in the change in the numbers, and not landsliding, but again there is a possibility reduced number in Labour and higher number in the independent parties, and ultimately that's going to be different. Let's see next Monday when we meet. We would like to see what we discuss and what actually happened. Thank you, Mr. Bernard Malik. Thank you, Professor Grant. And I hope this program ultimately Queensland tomorrow will see, and we will especially see the two important seats which Dr. Bernard Malik mentioned. What is going to be happen? Thanks, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.